Today, I'm talking with Heather, a former member of the World Mission Society Church of God. And I'm excited for you to hear her story and to listen to some of the experiences that she had in this group, especially, if you're a current member or somebody that is considering joining this group. I think it's very much worth your time to just hear her out, listen to her share, honestly, just her experiences. I think a lot of the times the WMSCOG will demonize former members. They will insult and attack their character. They'll attack their motives for why they're making these videos. I think that's just stuff that I hope you don't listen to. Heather deserves, and these other former members deserve you to just hear them out. Just hear out what they have to say. And then you decide if the WMSCOG is right or if they're right. But I think you're going to find a lot of her experiences insightful. I think there's going to be a lot that she talks about that you'll be able to relate to personally if you're still in this group. And I think she has some stuff to say for you if you're considering joining, or if you've recently joined, that you should really consider and inform yourself here by listening to her about what exactly it is that you're getting yourself into with this group. Well, Heather, hello, and thanks for coming on and being willing to share your story with us.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. I did do an interview with Josue on the Simple Christian podcast. I was baptized in the Church of God in 2010, so it's hard to kind of fit everything into just a few clips. So I don't know if you want me to start from the beginning and how I kind of came into the Church of God.
Yeah, I think let's start there. I think it'd be helpful to know kind of where were you kind of at in your life when you joined, and what were the reasons, looking back now, that you think you were drawn to this group?
So in 2010, I was in San Diego. I was actually on Camp Pendleton, and I had an older brother who is about a year older than me. So we were pretty close growing up, and he was in the Navy, and we were raised actually in Christianity. My grandpa's a pastor. So we were pretty familiar with Christianity, although I will say that after I turned 18, I kind of was doing my own thing. I became a young mom. So I was on Camp Pendleton, and I was actually thinking about joining the church there on base. And that week, my older brother called, and, we were talking, and he was saying that he was attending a church, and he just kind of laid it all out on me. Normally the members there don't bring up, Unsung Home or Heavenly Mother, but my brother did, and he was just
right up front.
He was really upfront with me, and he was like, I'm going to this church, and I just want you to know that Sundays are bad. You're not supposed to go on Sundays. You're supposed to go on Saturdays, and that, Second Coming Christ already came, and he came in 1948, and there's a Mother God, and she's alive now, and she's South Korea. And
so he just laid it out. Wow.
He did.
That's abnormal.
Exactly. And so my reaction was just like, okay, there's something wrong. Like this, I asked him, I was like, there's no Mother God in the Bible. And he's like, it's there. She's everywhere in the Bible. And I was like, where? And he really didn't give me an answer. He just said, you have to study. Okay. And as my brother, I looked up to my brother because he always continued in his faith, and I kind of stepped away, and he would always read his Bible. He always had memorized the Bible really well. Like if I wanted to know where a verse was, he would just give it to me right there. So I really looked up to him, and I trusted him, but at the same time, I was worried. I knew that something didn't go well with what he was telling me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of was like, oh, okay, yeah. And so a few months passed by, and it happened to be his birthday. And so I was like, hey, I want to take you out for lunch. And so he was like, okay. So I went to Santee, and that's where the main San Diego branch is. And I went there, and he wanted me to pick him up at the church. And I was like, okay, but I'm not getting out. And when I got there, he was like, hey, come out, I want you to meet the members. And I was like, no, because I have my younger son. I don't feel like getting out. And he's like, no, just come out. I'm taking out the trash. And I was like, you're taking out their trash? I was like, why? That's weird. And he's like, just come out. And so I came out, and it was really strange. Everyone was like, hi, God bless you,
Yeah, right.
just like overly
Love
nice,
bombing.
yes. And they're just giving me tons of compliments. They don't even know me. And my brother introduced me to, so in the Zions or in the Church of God's, there's the pastor and the pastor's wife that live there. And then there's usually a couple that lives there too. That's kind of like an assistant. And so who I met first was the assistant. And you might be familiar with the name. He's Missionary John. And gosh, I can't think of his last name right now, but he's pretty, he's pretty
well known
to the whole. Yeah, a lot of the members know who he is. He was deacon at the time, John Powers.
Okay.
He was deacon at the time, and he was a teacher of the youth group, and that's where my brother was. He was in the youth, and him and his wife came out, and they're just like, hi, and his wife is Korean, and she was so sweet, and she was just like, they were just trying to get me to study, basically. And so after lunch, when I came back, they asked me to study. And I was like, okay, I'm used to the study that's like the Bible studies that like starts as a group, and it's like at 6 p.m. or something. This was like in the middle of the day, and it's like one-on-one. And
in a closed room. Yeah.
Yeah, it was in a closed room, and it was like no one was in there. It was just a big, huge whiteboard, and my brother was sitting next to me, and someone who I never met, was taking my son, and my son wasn't even a year old yet, and I've never left him with anyone, and I was just like, oh man, I'm not comfortable with this, and they're like, no, it's okay. And it kind of like just pushing me into the room. And so I was just like, oh gosh, okay. And we ended up studying the Sabbath day, and we studied about us being angels before, the secret forgiveness of sins. And I will say that the Sabbath caught me off guard because I was raised in church, and I never knew that. I didn't realize that Sunday was the first day. I always thought it was the seventh day. So I guess I would say out of all the studies that kind of caught me off guard, because he asked Deacon John Powers, he asked me, he's like, what day is the seventh day? And I said, with a lot of confidence, I said Sunday. And he's like, no, you're wrong. And when he showed me the calendar and he showed me the dictionary, I was like, oh my gosh, And
do you feel like in that initial Bible study did it feel as if, and was a lot of the content of what they're saying aimed at discrediting other churches and other belief systems?
Yeah. So the main thing they'll say is, so no churches keep Saturday, so they're all wrong. And my heart sank because I was raised, my grandpa's a pastor, and he's going on Sundays, and I'm just thinking about all these people who just don't know. And just the way he says it, it's just like, there's nowhere you can go for salvation. No one is teaching the truth. They set it up that way.
I think this is a very common strategy that cults will use. Always, you look at Mormonism, and they're a big one that does this exact thing. Joseph Smith, he has the infamous statement about how all churches, all organizations, all other churches besides theirs are corrupt, and basically that same thing. They begin by kind of clearing the table. They discredit every other group, every other denomination. And so that I'm saying that just to say that's a sign of a cult. You look at that, and that's a very similar characteristic as a lot of these other groups that claim that they're the only ones with the truth. Another thing that sticks out to me about that when I hear that is that something we're often that I see in the comments often from members is they'll be upset and angry that we're speaking against this group, and they'll say, "Why don't you just leave us alone? Why aren't you picking on other groups? Why are you attacking us?" And my response to that is, well, you guys, the very foundation of the teachings that you'll do when you're going out and evangelizing is discrediting not only, my belief system, but every other belief system out there. And so how can you be offended or surprised when there's groups that are, you don't even have to use the word attack. Like we're just kind of responding to the evangelistic teaching that you're doing, where you're trying to discredit every other belief but yours. And so anyways, just a couple things that I think of when you bring up how they kind of function in those initial Bible studies.
Exactly. Yeah. It was very much like that, very much, attacking Christianity, in general. They try to set themselves apart from Christianity. They're the truth. And I guess when I say Christianity, I mean mainstream Christianity.
Yeah.
So, when I was baptized, they asked me to be baptized. I didn't even know An Sang Hong's name. I just knew that Christ came again in 1948. And then I knew there was a mother, but they didn't reveal his name to me. And so I didn't really make the connection that when they say Second Coming Christ came, I still thought Jesus. I didn't think anything about another name. So when they baptized me, they baptize you in the name of, it's very dramatic, in the name of Jehovah, in the name of Jesus, in the name of the Holy Spirit, An Sang Hong. And so as soon as he finished saying that, I was like, my heart started beating, and I got very nervous and anxious. And, next they baptized my son. And after, I got dressed and everything, because they have you wear like these robes and whatnot. But after I got dried off, I pulled my brother aside and I was like, "Hey, what was that name?" And he's like, "What name?" And I'm like, An Sang Hong. And he's like, "That's Second Coming Christ." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, I thought it was Jesus. I thought Jesus comes a second time." And he's like, "No, it is Jesus, but he has a new name. You have to study more, you just have to study." And so I went home and they gave me the brown book to read, and I was home and I was reading it, and I just felt, I don't know the right word. I just felt gross. I just felt,
You knew there was something off, something wrong about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt it. And I brought this feeling up next time I studied. And he just brushed it off and he said, "That's Satan working. That's Satan wanting you to not be saved." And so then I was just like, okay, but actually now when I think about it, it was most likely my gut feeling that was like, hey, like this isn't right. But because they set it up and because they kind of brush it off and brush off your feelings, I just kept on studying. And I kept studying.
So then how long did you end up staying in the church? So it sounds like you were, from the very get-go, you were pretty bothered by by them. Did that continue? Was that kind of your whole experience? Did you kind of learn to embrace Ong Song Hong or did that kind of continue to bother you until you left?
Well, my first goal was to go and try and disprove them to get my brother out. So as I kept studying with the Deacon John Powers and my brother, the Bible studies were not connecting for me. And but I wasn't a Christian as far as like I didn't read the Bible as much as I should have. So I couldn't defend the Bible. And so when they were doing studies with me, I would feel like they were overreaching conclusions. And the more and more I did Bible studies, the more I was just like, you know what, I'm not understanding this. And I would voice, my concern. And I would say, I'm not understanding these Bible studies. And that is when they brought the missionary there, the female missionary from San Diego, Brother, I don't know why I call him brother. It's a habit. Jeremy, Jeremy, who did the video, he's familiar with missionary. He's brought her up a couple times. And she's a force, she is very, I don't know, she's strong-willed. She has a strong personality, and I'm more kind of timid. And so she started studying with me, and she took me up into a room, and it was actually not a study room. It was just like a storage room. So it was like full of stuff. And she came and she was like, so what's your problem? Why don't you believe in An Song Hong? Is it because he's Korean? And I didn't want to say yes because she's Korean and I didn't want her to feel bad. So I was just like, I just don't understand. And so she just started giving me a Bible study of word vomit is the best word I can explain. It was so fast, and she was just going back and forth in her Bible, and I couldn't even follow along. And she was like, at the end, she was like, so do you understand now? And just kind of very, I don't know, like a bully. And so after she became my leader, I just started to, I guess, just push back my feelings and push back my thoughts. And I just started to accept the, I guess, quote unquote, the truth according to them. And I just, little by little, I stayed in, and I just would ignore my own thoughts. I mean, you're not allowed to have your own thoughts in the Church of God. You're not allowed to have emotion.
Yeah. And that seems evident from what you're saying, and just kind of the response they had to your sincere questions is, you can just tell by, the way you're describing their response, that they were just very frustrated and upset that you weren't just falling in line, that you weren't just becoming the robot, accept the programming, stop rejecting it. It just gets down to where it just, that to me is just an evidence of them not having so much of a sincere care for you, what you are feeling, even just like a genuine understanding and patience with your questions is more just like a, come on, get with the program, literally the programming,
Exactly. Exactly. And I stayed, I became a unit leader. It was right when I was training to be a group leader is when I started to just back off and back away. I actually came to my leader and told them I want to step down from being a leader. And after that, it was just different.
And how long had you been in the group before that you kind of got to that point?
So my very last service was in 2019, but I stepped down from my leadership role in 2018.
Okay. And you joined what year? You might have said it. Sorry.
That's okay. 2010.
2010. Okay. So you were in there for a number of years then.
Yeah, about 8 years, 8 or 9.
Wow. Okay. And all the while you had these questions and these doubts that you were just kind of being forced to shove under the rug.
Yeah, I I mean, the Bible studies just were not solid for me.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I question that, I mean, you're allowed to have questions as a newcomer, as a member, but once you become a leader, once you become someone who's preaching in the church, then those questions you will get rebuked for.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, as a member, as a newcomer, if I would say it's not making sense, they would ask me what specifically, and I couldn't always provide an answer as to what
Yeah.
specifically.
That's interesting. I don't know that I've heard um, many members that expressed having such a, just a hard time feeling convinced about the teachings in the Bible studies. I think most people that I've talked to seem to have thought that their Bible studies can be, to some, I think, really convincing. And so it's just interesting. I wonder if that had a lot to do with your upbringing and maybe teaching from the Bible that you'd been exposed to in the past that you maybe weren't even fully conscious of or aware of, that was just kind of a gate against this deceptive doctrine that they were trying to teach you.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I did fully believe once I shoved my feelings
Mm-hmm.
aside. I did feel like I was convinced and convicted. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
number one thing that pushed me was fear of hell,
Yeah.
guilt. I mean, that's their number one drive into members is guilt. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everything is, and I'm already a sensitive person and an emotional person. So, when you constantly get fed, how, you're a sinner, how dare you make Heavenly Mother feel pain? They even teach you that whenever a member is baptized, Heavenly Mother feels birth pains over and over again. And
Wow.
so it's almost like no matter what I do, I'm always hurting God. And
Yeah.
I was never good enough for God. I was
Very
never,
guilt
no matter
driven.
what I did. Yeah. So that is what really caused me to just keep pushing forward and push away my feelings. But the missionary there, that was my leader, she was really involved into personal lives, really involved into direction of my personal life as far as my relationships, my marriages. I did share a little bit on the Simple Christian podcast about how after my divorce, she introduced me to a brother there, and I told her I don't know, I don't, I don't know anything about him. I'm not attracted to him. I don't want to date him. And right there, she told me, you're so shallow. You're a sinner. How dare you expect to have a good husband? Those words literally came out of her mouth, and she just kept repeating it, and it was just to the point where I was like, okay, fine. I'm just going to go ahead and do this,
Mm-hmm.
and I did. And so at the end of
Wow.
the day, I don't know how many sisters she's done that to, and I think about it a lot. I think
That
about a
that
lot of the members that.
that's tragic, really. I mean, it's man. I mean, I know God can redeem even those situations and those marriages, but it's yeah, that's bordering on something. I mean, that should be illegal what they're doing in that way. And there's a lot of denial about arranged marriages happening in this group, and some might argue that wasn't an arranged marriage necessarily, but they're manipulating and pushing members mostly against your will. It's you're agreeing to the marriage ultimately, but it's after they've done their manipulating, guilt-driven work in your mind to really program you to accept it.
Right. I mean, these members of World Mission Society, Church of God is such a long name.
Yeah.
Once they come into the truth, their number one goal is to please Mother God. So if a leader is telling me, or if they're ashamed, or if they're making me feel like I'm committing a sin by saying no, then of course I'm going to want to do everything I can to just follow their
Yep.
direction, you know.
Even if it means somewhat ruining your life by getting into a relationship with somebody that you really should not be with. Yeah.
And even when we were dating, it was kind of like, do you guys have a date yet? And it was like, okay, you know, like I barely know this person. We were married probably a month later. I barely knew him. Eventually it didn't work out. And I asked my missionary, I told her, I was like, you know, this is what happened. And, you know, we're just not seeing eye to eye. You know, he disciplined my son, and it's like, I don't know you, and we didn't discuss really how to discipline, and I didn't agree with how he was disciplining my son. So it was just other things too. We were just not eye to eye on things. And when I pulled the missionary aside and I was like, this is not working out, I want a divorce. And she just kind of grabbed my elbow and shoved me into the room and was like, just gave me the most harshest rebuking I've ever had. And I just cried myself to sleep that night. And she would, you know, basically just told me the same thing. You know, you're such a disgrace, you know, disappointment. You're a sinner, you know, how dare you? And I think ultimately it was probably because she was the one who set us up, and it was more like a pride thing, maybe.
Yeah, it's going to look bad for her.
Yeah. So, I mean, eventually I moved to a different different Church of God. So I, you know, completely different members, different leadership, but still under San Diego as a branch. So San Diego Church has branches, like they have Chula Vista is their own branch now, but they have like Escondido, they have other ones in the surrounding area that still report to San Diego. So I went to a different zone that still reports to San Diego. And that's when I started training to become a group leader. And that leader there was like, are you divorced yet? You know, when are you going to be divorced? And kept asking me. And finally I was divorced. And then immediately after, he wanted me to be set up with another member there. And I'm just like, why do you guys keep doing this? Like, I don't, I'm like, if I'm going to get married again, then I want to pick my own person on my own.
That's a reasonable desire to have.
Right. And so I ended up picking my own husband, who I preached to. Actually, we met at work, and we're still married today.
Okay.
So yeah, we ended up getting married. But
so with all this, how do you feel like this group impacted you, like as a person, like your personality, the person that you were before, pre being in the WMSCOG, and then how do you feel like it affected who you were while you were in this group, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So before, you know, I was all about, you know, not judging anyone, just all about love. And I knew Jesus was love, and I knew Jesus wanted to save. And he did that through action, and he did that by expressing love to others. And I think when I became baptized, I pushed away my morals, I guess, if that makes sense. I became judgy. I would not preach to homeless. I would not preach to, if I had a coworker who I knew was homosexual, I wouldn't preach to them.
And why was that? Was that influenced by teaching that you were hearing, or what you were being led to do, or was that more just, what do you feel like, the self-righteous attitude you were having yourself?
No, I mean, they teach not to preach to homeless. They teach not to preach to anyone who is homosexual unless they are willing to change themselves. They teach that. I mean, I know that they are going to deny it, but I was taught that, and I know other members were taught that. My brother, actually, who I looked up to, he is homeless now, and the church kicked him out.
Just because of that.
Yeah, just because he's homeless. Wow. And
so you feel then like this group didn't, the teachings from the Bible they were giving you, it wasn't forming you into a more loving, more kind, more gracious person?
No, absolutely not. It was more judgmental. I was more, I wouldn't talk to my family. Anyone who, like, during Christmas time, members would just constantly be like, oh, look at that person, you know, with all those lights on their house. Like, everything, it was about just making fun of people who they preached to. After I went preaching, members would gather for lunch, and members would literally just sit around and be like, yeah, I preached to this one girl, and you know, she was just so, you know, about holidays and stuff. And you know, it's just like, okay, whatever.
It's like we've got it together, and everybody else is just lost.
Yeah, it was very like they feel like they're so righteous.
Yeah.
And even when I was training to be a group leader, that's when I was just really over it, because towards the end, when I was about to leave, I actually became pregnant. And leaders who become pregnant are just kind of looked down upon, because once you're a leader, you should dedicate your life to the gospel. And that means that if you become pregnant, you're wasting 9 months or so, maybe sometimes even a year, because you're taking care of a newborn. So it's not really heard of that group leaders or deaconesses become pregnant. There are some who do, I will say, but like I said, you get treated differently. You get looked down upon. Members talk behind your back. I had to work like overtime at work, and constantly sisters would talk about me.
So in regards to that, do you feel like, or did you ever witness any sort of pressuring toward abortion? Because I feel like I've heard that in the past. Was that something that was encouraged? Was that I'm curious if that was like mentioned to you, or?
No, it actually was not, because I already stepped down from my leadership role. I was already kind of pushing away from Church of God at that point when I became pregnant. So I was not told about abortion or anything, but I have heard rumors, but I can't, confirm them.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I was just curious because I've heard that before, and I didn't know if that's a commonly experienced thing or not.
Say though that the Noah's son story about I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's like a racist Bible study, and about Noah's sons, and then I think it's Ham.
I
was taught that directly.
I think it is Ham.
Yeah, Curse of Ham or something like that. And the missionary there taught me that study, and she said, this is why blacks are cursed. That's what she said. And I was just like, this is weird, this is kind of like
racist.
Doesn't seem like
it
doesn't seem like God would say something like that. So when missionary Ron Ramos, when he made that video and he mentioned the Bible study of the Noah's study that he was given, the Church of God actually took his video and kind of edited it and made it kind of like, oh, he's lying, and showed pictures of like African Americans in the Church of God trying to like disprove it. But I remember sitting there and I was like, okay, I was taught that study. How are you going to say now that that's a lie? So that's kind of
So
like little things that was happening.
so they've been kind of trying to move away from that. Is that right?
Oh
And
yeah,
kind of remove themselves, and it'll probably end up in one of the categories of teachings that they never taught.
right.
When something becomes problematic and starts to make them look bad, and they begin to realize, oh, this teaching isn't good for us. Well, they'll get rid of it, and then years down the line they'll just say, oh no, we never taught that.
Yeah, I think they
Yeah.
do that now with the Noah Sun study. They say
Okay.
they never taught it, but I mean that's
So
ridiculous.
so how did this being in the group, did it impact you? I think you mentioned it a little bit, but did it impact your relationships with family and your friends from before being in the group?
So when I started becoming more involved and a leader at that point, I had no friends. I mean, I didn't have any friends. The friends that I did have were, more involved into like going out. And I remember I had roommates because a lot of the times Church of God members will just be roommates with each other to save money on rent. So I became a single mom, and I had a few roommates, and I would work late at my job. It was at Toys R Us at the time, and so I would work late, and I would come home late, and then they would run and tell the missionary that I'm doing things at night, and it's like, are you serious? Like, I'm working. And so the
Mm-hmm.
missionary would pull me aside and be like, what are you doing? And she's like, nothing good happens at night, and I'm like, I'm working. And so one
Yeah.
time I remember I got a different job. So my coworkers wanted to plan for me a like congratulations party. And so we ended up all going out for sushi that night. And the next day, like the missionary was like, what are you doing hanging out with sinners and, people who are dead in the eyes of God, and
That sounds familiar. I once heard a Pharisee or two say that in the Gospels.
yeah. And so I couldn't do anything. I literally could not enjoy my time. Okay. Something else ridiculous is I would shop clothes because I need preaching clothes. I need clothes, right? I would shop at Goodwill. And I remember shopping at Goodwill, and the missionary was like, you're spending too much money on clothes. And I'm like, are you serious? I went to Goodwill. There were just so much involved
Yeah.
into everything I did.
Wow.
And
So this is, I think, what all this is just painting a good picture for kind of what life is going to be like for those who are considering joining this group. It's like these examples you're giving. This is kind of what you're signing up for. if you're going to join the WMSCOG, you're signing up for a lot of these experiences. This is kind of the direction you're taking your life.
right. Yeah, I mean, you can't have your own thoughts. You can't have your own emotions. I was going through depression. I remember one Sabbath day I was crying, and the missionary was like, you need to stop crying right now. Other members are going to see you, and they're going to see that you are crying, and they're going to ask questions, and we don't need that. And so I had to just shut off everything. I was losing weight. I was like a size 1 or 2. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, if you become a member, you're going to be told, not to spend money on certain things. Don't buy I was shopping at Goodwill, and I got rebuked for buying clothes at Goodwill. I shut off my family. I didn't want to hang out with my family because I knew that they're going to ask about where I've been and what I've been doing in the church.
Yeah.
And I knew that the holidays were going to be hard. Towards the end, the Church of God was allowing us to go to family members' houses for Christmas. that was towards the end when I was about to leave. I don't know how lenient they are now, but in the
Interesting.
beginning, it wasn't like, in the beginning, it
Yeah.
was very strict.
So tell us more maybe about that struggle with depression, and do you feel like that was that a long-term thing? Was it kind of a short period of time, and do you feel like it was caused by being in this group?
Um, I feel like it has a lot of reasons why. I mean, I was going through a rough marriage in the beginning when I first got baptized, and I even had plans to, leave him and move with my mom, but the missionary talked me out of it. And I already knew that he was constantly cheating on me, but the missionary was like, just stay with him. And I think that had a lot to do with maybe because he was military and I wasn't making money on my own, and they knew that I would be using his money for tithes and offerings. So
And they're very concerned about your tithes.
right, they talked him into getting baptized, even though he was atheist. He just got baptized because, and it just didn't work out. And I think a lot of the issues that I brought into the Church of God was from that marriage. And just being told to kind of leave the emotions before you step into the Church of God, I think that just did more damage than anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
There wasn't much sympathy then. You had
no.
a real legitimate problem that scientifically comes down to even chemical imbalances, and it's not just a choice to not be depressed. There's physical elements that are involved with a struggle like that, and so rather than showing sympathy or helping encourage you or assist with pushing you toward medical help or whatever things that you actually needed, because this was a legitimate struggle, they didn't do any of that, but rather probably it sounds like made it worse.
Yeah. When I look back on just being in the Church of God, I feel like it was very robotic for me. I just had to just kind of put in the back of my mind all the emotional abuse that I experienced from leadership there. If you're depressed, it's kind of like, okay, we're sinners. Everything is like, okay, we're all sinners. Like, you're depressed because you're a sinner. Like, that's the reason for everything. And, I couldn't really vent. Like, it's healthy to vent every now and then to maybe a leader or a pastor. I just felt like I could not vent. And I could not really count on the missionary to just kind of soothe me or just give me words of advice.
You are in the middle of a group of people that really, they were all you had because of the way they separate you from the outside world, but they were more concerned with how your struggle was going to look to them and to the church than they were with actually being concerned with what you were feeling and experiencing.
Yeah, and that's so spot on. I mean, all they're worried about is their image at the end of the day. If you're not smiling, you need to smile and fake it till you make it, is what they used to tell me. Image is everything to them.
Yeah. And it's interesting and significant that Jesus, in one of his most famous teachings, the people that he says are blessed are the poor in spirit, those who mourn, those who, those who are lowly and contrite in heart. It's a consistent teaching in the Bible. Psalm 34, one of my favorite psalms, where it says that God is near to the brokenhearted. He saves the crushed in spirit. God is not. Yeah, that's what they're painting, such a terrible picture of God. that it's almost unbelievable that they could walk in that. And yeah, it's just Sermon on the Mount. You have Jesus saying that the poor in spirit are blessed, and yet they're telling you can't even come to the house of God unless you're willing to cover up all your emotions, all that you're really feeling, put on this smile.
Yeah, I mean, even to this day, I mean, my last service was in 2019, but I stepped down in 2018. But even to this day, I still struggle. I mean, when I first left, you have fear, you have depression. I mean, you feel so alone because they're the only people who you know, who you associate with. Even though I had family, it's like I haven't talked to them in so long. Like, these members become your family in a way. And there's sisters that I've known since 2010, and I became nothing to them. I became a demon almost to them. Like, don't talk to her, don't associate with her. And it's very, like, it's almost like your blinders come off and you realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm utterly alone. And I mean, I guess if I was to give advice to members who are thinking of leaving, you know, I think step one is to just take time for yourself, enjoy yourself, you know, whatever that may be, whether it's buying yourself something that you thought you could never buy before, whether it's taking a spa day, you know, like, take time for yourself, know who you are again, because who you are is only Church of God. That's who, when I broke away, all I knew about myself was World Mission Society, Church of God. I was nothing else. I became them. I talked like them. I thought like them. And I think the second step is to deconstruct, you know, do deconstruction where you research. I mean, that's so important, because members, when they leave and they don't do research, they end up coming back to Church of God. And that's because they haven't broke down whatever was drilled in your head at the time. It's important to deconstruct. What I did was I mentioned to you, I mean, I saw your videos. I think the first video I saw was the Jeremy video on your channel. And I read every single comment. Like, there are silent members out there who are reading comments. And when Church of God leaves those type of comments, you're only
you're helping our videos out. Like, yeah, you're doing a service to our videos, really.
And I think it was, I can't remember which account, but they had a picture of Mother, and the comments are deleted now, but the comments that they directed towards Jeremy was like, are you serious? You're going to comment that with Mother on your picture? Like,
wow.
I don't know if it was a leader. It sounded like it was a leader.
Jeremy, I know, had a lot of pretty intense things being said to him in the comments that he made a video or two responding to some of it, but that's so true. And it's, you know, I mean, I'm getting comments today that I'm reading through, you know, that I was looking at like an hour before doing this interview, and a common thing that I see is what I think is called ad hominem type of argumentation. So these people are coming on these comments, obviously these members that are angry, but they are, rather than responding to the criticisms or the problems being presented, the contradictions or the arguments we're putting forth in the videos, or even responding to your guys' experiences that you're sharing, a lot of what's happening is just they'll insult my character and they'll insult, you know, your guys' character. They just immediately go to, rather than objectively stepping back and thinking about what is being said and researching and figuring out, okay, is this true? Is there a legitimate response to this? They'll just attack character. And so right now I'm being criticized on a regular basis right now because of the monetization on our channel, because and it's just it's just interesting. And I think, like you're saying, what that is doing is actually helping to hopefully the members like you, the silent members in the channel. It really is just adding to, in many cases, I think, the videos we're putting out. It's just kind of an addition to it to help further our argument about what this group is.
Yeah, I mean, it was just when I was reading those comments after, I first left, I was like, it was almost like validating for me. So like I said, if you're thinking of leaving a member, and the most important thing is to just deconstruct everything that you were taught.
Yep.
And, do your research.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to fall back into wanting to go back.
Right. So were you... This is something I want to ask you former members a little bit more. I'm curious, at what point in your journey were you beginning to watch videos? And then I'm just curious, what videos that we have personally made did you find to be the most beneficial? Because as we continue moving forward, to get feedback on you guys who are right there in the middle of it, we're making videos for a primary reason is for people like you, for where you are at. And so I'm just curious, at what part did you start? Was it before leaving the WMSCOG, or was it after you'd left? And then what content did you find most helpful in that time?
So I actually didn't officially leave. When I started watching videos, I was more at I think it was after I stepped down from my leadership role and started feeling different, like being treated differently. That's when I started looking up videos. And the first video I just typed in WMSCOG on YouTube, and the first video was the Jeremy video.
Yeah,
from you.
He's done a good job with getting that to stick at the top.
Yeah, so. And so I clicked on it, and when he revealed he was from San Diego, I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, I mean, I started watching, and then I was reading the comments. I was still attending, but I was not, I guess you could say I was not attending faithfully. Like, I would miss some services here and there. But only after I stepped down from that leadership role is when I started watching videos and doing research on the church. I mean, I had looked before, like maybe once I hit my 5-year mark, that was when I looked before on YouTube, but they weren't, it was weird. Like it hit me differently when I was being treated, when I stepped down from leadership. Like, I did see a video before from a former member, but it didn't affect me. And I also didn't fully listen to it. It was kind of like one ear out the other for me. And that's because I was still like a faithful member. So I almost wonder if that is what members do too, is they just pause it and they read the comments, because that's kind of what I did when I watched it the first time. Really?
So you mean, rather than, you didn't really feel open to listening to what was being said in the video?
No, not when I was faithful.
Yeah. I do think there is a lot of that going on, which is understandable if you have this faith, and it's a scary thing to have a faith, any kind of faith, and to see somebody speaking and having arguments against it. You're going to want to try to avoid that if you're not in a place where you want the truth more than you want to just be comfortable with what you've been believing. But what was it? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's hard for members too, because they're taught that it's eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So, I never wanted to really listen either, because I was afraid I was going to go to hell, or
just the fear, the fear instilled. It's, I think the analogy I use a lot is just the fear is like the deadbolts that they put on the door once you've walked inside. It's, and one of the ways to get out of this group is to go online and just research, but they bolt the door shut with the fear of, you're going to die spiritually if you do that. And so what was it though that that really pushed you to go from being in the group and, having things that you had kind of pushed under the carpet for years probably, but what was it that kind of really was the core that made you say, okay, I need to move away from this?
It was a lot of little things. I mean, when I listened to Jeremy's video, it was the first video that you guys did the interview with him. And I read the comments. I mean, the comments and just the behavior who are supposed to be representatives of World Mission Society Church of God. I feel like that kind of revealed itself.
Yeah.
They were just being vindictive. They were being rude. They were calling him names, that, and also Big Shine. I felt like, okay, like you guys have there's another company out there that.
Explain what that is.
It's a company that it's Big Shine Energy or Big Shine Inc. or something like that. There's a few companies. There's a company in Korea. There's a company in LA and New York, and they have a website as well. If you type in the one from Korea, then you can see their locations. I use the Wayback Machine to find other information from there as far as like the addresses, but I don't think they have them up anymore on the current website. But I mean, what it is they like have like how you're on the highway and it has those lights up there.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And then they have projectors, which we have in Zion. And it's owned by, I think it's Daniel Lee. And he's the pastor that's in New York. And then there's other names that are connected to it that are in LA too.
So what about that did you see that was problematic to you? What about that bothered you?
What bothered me is that when I researched the company, it said that it's worth billions. And I felt like that was a little shady for me. I just felt like it was a red flag because, it said it only had like 6 employees working for that company, but it's worth billions. Like, how is that possible? I can't wrap my head around that. I did speak to a mom of a member who worked for Big Shine. And she said that, he was so poor, like they paid him barely anything. But this company is worth billions. Like, I still don't fully understand the company because there's not a lot of information on it. But if you look at the website examining WMSCOG, you'll find some court cases on the website, and you'll see that Big Shine is mentioned in there. So I myself, I went on LinkedIn, the website LinkedIn, and I looked at members who were actually members of Church of God, and they were affiliated with Big Shine. So I know for a fact that World Mission Society Church of God members are affiliated with the company. I just don't know much else about it. There's not a lot out there about it, but I do recommend members researching it and looking into the court cases and just kind of reading the court cases for yourself.
Yep. So tell us about, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that was one red flag. I mean, there was so many others that kind of led me out, but one major one, I'm sorry, is my brother.
No, go ahead.
I mentioned that he was homeless, and they kicked him out. That was probably the one that hit home for me. It was like,
so they kicked him out not because of him wanting to leave or it was just because of his financial situation at the time.
Yeah. According to my brother, when I last talked to him, he said that, he wasn't allowed back into the church until he was financially stable. And I mean, my brother still believes in the church.
Okay. And is he older or younger than you?
He's 1 year older.
Okay.
And I mean, I feel like he just probably was more, I mean, he's probably been more affected from the church than me, just because it affected him more. I mean, he was supposed to, the pastor at the time was arranging for him to be married to a Korean sister, and he said no. And after that, it was just kind of like he wasn't treated the same.
Wow.
And
That's crazy.
yeah.
So a lot of bad experiences that are hugely problematic, and a lot of things that are similar to all the other testimonies we hear that I think just continue to show when you sign up to join this group, you're signing up for some not good stuff, for a experience in life that is just going to not be good. And the fruit of these things that they're doing, the way they're, just kicking your brother out for the reason they did, it's just kind of bewildering, and how it just kind of reminds me again of how Jesus talks about, that you strain out a gnat and swallow a camel, and they're so focused, passionate about Sabbath and festivals and things like that, but they're so good at neglecting mercy and compassion and love. And in your case, your sincere struggle with depression, which is just a horrible, terribly difficult thing to have and to struggle with. And to have a group of people that you are relying on, that are your family, that rather than giving sympathy and help, they make you feel guilty for that, and they put more guilt, more just load you with more burdens rather than help you carry the burden you're carrying, and all of it is just such a clear indication that this is not the Church of God. That is not a representation of God on the earth.
Yeah. I mean, and I did have conversations with my leader of the church with my questions. I presented my questions to him and gave him an opportunity to, I guess, back up
Convince you.
his church. And he didn't really give me any answers. And I know that other former members have said that too. I mean, I didn't just completely just be like, no, you guys are false. Like, I wanted to give that chance also for them to speak. Yeah. And, I remember asking him, I want to know why God is suing other members. I asked him that on the phone. And
why God is suing? Is that what you said?
Suing other members. Okay. I feel like God has more things to do than just sit around and, look at former members and be like, oh, I want to sue that member.
Right.
Like, come on.
Yes. Yeah. Jesus, Peter talks about how Christ, when he was insulted, he didn't respond with insults. When he was slandered, he didn't respond with slander. And, you literally have God in flesh being punched in the face, having his beard ripped out, being accused of things he did not do, being lied about, accused as a criminal, the most innocent person ever. And he didn't retaliate. He didn't respond with aggression or try to vindicate himself. You have Jesus teaching, pray for your enemies. He says, you've heard it said, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, if your enemy, insults you, he says, pray, bless them, do good to those who persecute you. And so if it is really persecution that these former members are inflicting on the WMSCOG when they're coming out speaking against the church, if that's persecution, then guys, Jesus has given you clear direction for how you are to respond to that. And it's not by suing and trying to vindicate yourself and attacking and trying to make that person's character seem like they're, just this Satan in the flesh kind of thing. And that's what they do. That's how they respond to attacks. I don't, and I've never seen an example from the WMSCOG of responding to their enemies in the way Jesus has commanded them to. And this is just stuff that, this gets back to this group's emphasis and focus on commands. I get this all the time. You don't keep the command of Sabbath. You don't keep the commands of the feast, and just sort of that kind of accusation in response to our videos. But guys, the Sermon on the Mount contains, I think, the weightiest commands of Jesus that there are. Why are you so concerned with whether or not you're observing a certain day, but you're completely unconcerned with the love, mercy, and kindness you're showing to other people? Which one of those things, love, kindness, compassion, mercy, or observance of days and festivals, which one of those does Jesus focus on more? Which one does he emphasize more? Which one does he talk about more? And so, yeah, it's one of those things where this goes back to me and Tim Hoffman's video where they are focused so much on these lesser, lighter matters of the law, and they focus in on these, or they're focusing on those less significant, less important matters, and they completely neglect the thing that really matters, which is mercy, love for God and love for others, and it's just neglected.
Yeah, and he didn't really have any answers for me. And I mean, if this was the truth, I would have concrete answers. I did also bring up the Divine Principle book that was written by one of the Mooney guy, the Sung Myung Moon or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it was written before An Sung Hong wrote his books, and it has, coming from the East in there. It has the bride in there. It has fig tree. It has all of the studies that we learned in this book. And I asked him, why is it that our studies are in this book? If An Sung Hong is unique to these teachings, unique to Church of God, then why does the Moonies have this similar studies? And he didn't have an answer either. And then there's a document of An Sung Hong's baptism date, which I think is 54, and they say 1948. So, I mean, to this day, I don't have. I've even reached out to I reached out to a sister, and I reached out to a deaconess, and the deaconess, she was supposed to call me, she never did. So, I mean, I don't have any answers from them. Mm-hmm. I mean, they
didn't give answers to your questions.
I was just going to say, if Mother God is, they tell us constantly, she loves us, to the point of death and all this, then why haven't I gotten a phone call from Mother? Why hasn't she told me, hey, I miss you, I love you, this is the answers to your question, please come back to the truth? Like, I haven't gotten anything from her.
Yeah, that's a legitimate question to ask. And for
I did see Mother too in Korea as well, so her. You would think that, yeah.
Okay, did she know your name?
She had to read my name tag.
Okay, yeah, right, yeah. So what has your faith journey been like since leaving the group, and where, if you're okay with me asking, where are you at now with faith in God, and how do you see the Bible and things like that?
So when I first left, it was hard to go back to the Bible and start reading it. So I gave myself some time, and then eventually I ended up just diving back into it. And at this point, I'm still on my journey. I'm still doing my own research as far as the Bible and making sure that I read context instead of just I want to pick and choose verses. So I'm still just on my journey. I'm still researching. I mean, I know now that World Mission Society Church of God is not the truth because
Right.
I've been doing my own reading. And before, there's always this little doubt in your mind, but I don't have that anymore. I know
So
that
when you leave, you kind of go through a season of still having kind of in the back of your mind the what if questions of what if this is true? What if I'm actually going to hell because of leaving this group? Things like that. But you're saying that eventually goes away.
Yeah, like I said, that's why it's so important for former members to just do your research, because little by little it'll start leaving the what ifs will start leaving your mind. So yeah, the more and more I do my own research, the more Bible reading I do, then the more I am confident that it was all a facade. It was all a lie. It was all made up.
Yep. So you haven't been impacted by this group in the way that has led you to kind of just throw out the idea of faith in God.
No, I mean, I'm still open to Christianity. I mean, I'm not attending church, but I'm not completely closed-minded either about it. I guess I'm just still on my journey. I'm still doing my researching, and I'm still reading the Bible, and I'm still just trying to get a feel of who I am. And
yeah, which I think is where we're all at. That's certainly where I'm at. So, but it's good to hear. I think a lot of people probably leave this group, and through associations with this group to the Bible and even to God himself, to thoughts about who God is and what he's like. I think when you leave this group, I would imagine, and I think it's a common thing that we hear from a lot of members, is that it's really hard to continue having a faith, or to know what to do with God, what to do with the Bible, and even just having somewhat of an aversion to the Bible or to the idea of God. Do you feel like you've experienced any of that, and how have you kind of dealt with those kind of thoughts and emotions?
I definitely did have felt, I don't know, what do I do now? I didn't know. I felt uncomfortable with the name Jesus, even just because it was drilled into our minds that Jesus is not the name anymore. So it was hard I found myself difficult to pray, difficult to read the Bible, just because you have that mindset of just, sometimes you read a verse that I used to read back then when preaching, and it's kind of like a little bit of PTSD. Like, oh, I used to read that verse, like, to remember, like, ooh.
Yeah. Yep.
But, I mean, it's just, I wouldn't say that I'm completely atheist. I guess I would put myself more agnostic, I guess, as far as I'm not closed-minded. I mean, but I'm also not willing to happily go into a church at this point, just because I don't want to be naive again, and I don't want to be taken advantage of again. So I'm just a little bit more cautious, I would say.
This is all pretty fresh for you. I mean, you haven't, in the broad scheme of things, you haven't been out of the group for a huge amount of time, and so I think a lot of this is still fresh. And I hope you're encouraged, and others are encouraged by other members who we're talking to that have been out for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And I think it seems that there's a pattern. The ones who are more recent, having left this group, you see a lot of similarities to what you're saying. It's just you're in the process where it's much more difficult to really know with any kind of certainty what do you think about God, what do you think about the Bible. and you're seeing people farther along that are a little bit more settled, I guess, and have kind of, I think it's just that simple concept of time heals, everything. And so that's not a slant against you or where you're at. It's just, I think, more of an encouragement to say that I just think there's a lot of hope, and it makes sense that leaving this, there's going to be a lot of baggage that comes with it. A lot of, I think, just emotional damage that was done, a lot of healing that needs to happen. But it's fun to see a lot of the people who have been out for more years coming back even to a faith in God and realizing I don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And the WMSCOG does not accurately represent who God is or what he's like. And I think it takes some time, though, to retrain your mind to even be able to think that way and process things that way.
Yes, it definitely does. I mean, I feel like the research has definitely been helping me a lot. And I encourage the silent watchers, silent readers, to just, do your research, look at the comments that members are leaving, read the court cases on the website. Really, I mean, that's going to help you. I mean, it's helped me. And I still have, I probably should seek therapy. I mean, I would recommend former members seeking therapy. I haven't, but I probably should, because it's a lot of emotional damage. I mean, you're being told constantly that you're unworthy. I mean, it's really just messed up. I don't know how else to say it.
So tell us, I guess, to kind of wrap this up, and you might have already kind of said it, but what would you say to, I think, both current members that are in this group that may be watching or may watch in the future, or to those who have left and are maybe really struggling right now with that? Would you have any words of advice or encouragement?
For current members, I would say, members who've left, it's not because they're in love with the world or they're in love with sinly desires. Some members, like myself, I left because I just didn't feel right. I mean, I felt it was hypocritical of the way some members were being treated. So just keep that in mind. I mean, it's not always, a lot of the times Church of God will say, they left because they loved the desires of the world, or they left for money. That's not the case. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of hypocritical things going on in the church, and love is love. And, love is not only a fake love that we learned in Zion. Just listen to former members and give us the chance. I mean, we're not evil. We're not demonic.
You're sincere people who have begun to think objectively. You've begun to ask questions. You saw legitimate issues within this group. You ask why. You looked for solutions to these problems, and you didn't find solutions. And through a process of researching, you've discovered that this group is what it is. It's false.
Right. And it's not like I didn't give a chance for the leader of the church to provide me answers. I did, and I didn't receive any. And a lot of former members haven't received any answers. I don't know, Kelsey, she had questions too, and she didn't get answers. So as far as members who are former and who are struggling, like I said, take time for yourself. It's important to know who you are again outside of Church of God, and know who you are as a person. And, whatever that may be, spending time with family, taking a spa day, taking a vacation, maybe not right now because of the pandemic, but, take some time for yourself. Watch a TV show. I mean, I couldn't even watch a TV show when I was in the church. Watch a TV show, enjoy your children, enjoy learning how to cook a meal. Just enjoy the time you have now, because you're going to have time outside of the Church of God. And then second, like I said, deconstruct your mind. You need to do your research. You need to really undo everything that they told you in your mind, that you're a sinner, you're unworthy. This is the truth. Like I said, you need to really do your research and really just try and read the Bible, but give yourself time. Don't push yourself to the point where you're just frustrated. Like you have to give time for yourself. I think time is important. Like if you're feeling alone and you feel like you have no one else, you can always reach out to former members. You can reach out to me, and I would be willing to talk to you, and we can talk about our struggles in the church and talk about who we are now as people. And sometimes the church will say, we're miserable now. I can say I am not miserable. I enjoy my life. I enjoy my children. I mean, when you're a leader, you don't even have time to make dinner. As you're off work, you flee to Zion. You spend all your time there. And so now I enjoy sitting down at the table and having a good family meal and talking to each other and just, you have to learn how to live your life again. Really, you do.
You are an individual with specific purposes in life, with specific calling, with specific, deep down, I think God created you and everyone else with just unique desires and goals and things that you are good at. And when you enter this group, you're just joining the ranks of the robots, and you're kind of forced to lose all that. You're forced to lay aside your own uniqueness and your own passions and things that you enjoy, and even to the point of your family. And the good news is when you leave, you get that back, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not something to feel guilty over, to enjoy these things.
It's sad because I know members who are they completely shut off their parents, their parents who try to reach out and they're like, please if they even try to expose the World Mission Society Church of God, they get shut off from their lives. And I've known members to do that. And
members are pressured into, if your family doesn't join and agree with the doctrine, then sort of separate yourself from them. And we've heard of instances where there's, even threats of like moving the child to a different state, putting them in a different Zion. And it's just that separation and division that I think does happen. I think this is another issue that they know is it doesn't look good for them. And so I think they've been trying to do some things to move away from that. But I think it's clear that, that's something they do, is they're going to divide you from your family. Again, the things that are most important in life, they teach you to neglect.
Yes. And I mean, look at it this way, for current members or former members, when you're in the World Mission Society Church of God and you choose to cut off your family, then when you leave Church of God, your family is going to be there for you. But when I left, Church of God was not there for me. So who's your real family? Who has your back at the end of the day? Your family is always going to be there no matter what you tell them. If you say, I'm not going to talk to you because you're a sinner and you think my church is a false church, and then say you do end up leaving, who's going to have your back? Is the Church of God going to have your back, or is your family going to have your back?
Yeah. The Church of God's going to be attacking you from behind. They're going to be attacking your back as you turn away, But your family is the one in this situation with the unconditional love for you, not this group. This group's love is anything but unconditional.
Yeah, I would not describe it as unconditional. I mean, like I said, I haven't heard a peep out of Mother God, so.
Yes, right. Well, Heather, thanks a lot for coming on and sharing your story. I'm So yeah, glad that you're out of this group, and know that you're on a journey. Know that you are, you know, you're facing things and experiences and things that you're healing from that I'm sure I can't understand, but I know that you are heading in the right direction. And yeah, I'm just so glad that you're and thankful that you're willing to come on and share your story. And I just know it'll help other people, and others will be encouraged by hearing your experiences, being able to relate to it, and just seeing that you're doing okay. You're doing good apart from this group.
Yes, and I hope that, it helps too. I hope that it hopefully opens some eyes and they wake up.